Hey friends, welcome back. Salutations and greetings. We're back on the line, writer, GATA member, researcher, musician, and everyone's favorite economic conspiracy theorist, Bix Weir from Road to Ruta. And guys, be sure to stay tuned because Bix and I are going to talk a little bit about silver here and the price of silver in the beginning, but then we get into some very esoteric, very occult-riddled information as it pertains to the world in 2016 and the Rothschild's Economist magazine. This is a gripping interview. You're not going to want to miss that part. Bix, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Sean. How are you?
Well, I'm hanging in there, man. I wanted to get on the line with you and talk about the fact that the cartel is absolutely pummeling gold and silver after last week's Fed rate hike, and I wanted to get your impressions on that. Did you find it fascinating that after the announcement, gold and silver spiked? They were doing pretty well, and then I think it was on Thursday they got absolutely slammed. What did you make of that? No surprises, I guess, huh? The cartel's just going to continue to rig.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been talking about this for a long time, that they can set the price via their computers to $0 or $1 million an ounce with a click of a mouse. And that's been true since the mid-'70s, and I've talked about it a zillion times. So it doesn't surprise me. Some of the more interesting things, I think, is that it's clear that JP Morgan is positioning themselves to take advantage of the next move up, which they have never done before. According to Ted Butler, they have over 500 million ounces of physical silver. They're still short on the paper contracts, which is brilliant. You know, you short the paper and you buy the physical. You get the physical cheap till it runs out, and then all of a sudden, you know, they either shut down the COMEX or you just drive the price up, and you've got all this physical to it's going to be worth so much more than the paper. So yeah, the positioning right now is for the end game, and the end game will be the explosion upward in the price of silver and the destruction of the COMEX. So I'm very excited about what's happening. And the U.S. Silver Eagle program stopped again in December last week. I think total of 47 million ounces were sold, which is a record. Why it takes 3 weeks or a month to change out the dies at the for the new 2016 Silver Eagles is beyond me, but I'm not going to even go there anymore. So a lot of things looking good for silver in 2016.
I want to ask you about silver here. Let's explore this a little bit further. You know, as our friend Annie Hoffman always says, eventually economic Mother Nature will win out in this cartel fixing. It can't go on forever. As it pertains to silver, though, Bix, I just wonder how much further can they possibly afford to take it? Because unlike let's look at lumber, for instance, right? When you're building a house, there are hard costs associated with purchasing the lumber. And lumber is a renewable resource. They can always plant more trees. You can't plant more silver. You can only dig up so much. They're absolutely decimating the mining companies. They're just going to bring the whole mining sector to its knees. And eventually there will be precious few people holding physical precious metal. And maybe that's the goal, huh? They just want to demonetize it. They want to just remove its value from the minds of the sheeple to the degree that $13 silver can't possibly be worth putting fiat money into.
Well, I think it's a little more than that. I think they want to destroy the system. Both the good guys and the bad guys have run this game for so long, and yeah, you can't run it forever, but they've been running it maybe 100 years. I mean, it's been ridiculous how long then they've been able to do it. And usually when you go off a gold standard like we did in 71, the system reverts back to a gold and silver type of standard because it never lasts, because you can, given the ability to print money at will, you're going to print yourself into oblivion. Well, in 1971, they instituted computer rigging programs, which we did not have prior to that. And they instituted a electronic monetary system that we also did not have prior to that. So today, what we see as money are really, the majority of them are electronic blips, credits on somebody else's balance sheet. Has nothing to do with real money and real wealth. So yeah, they've been able to rig it for a long, long time. But you're right, it won't go on forever because neither side wants it to go on forever now. The good guys want to crash the system to get the bad guys out. The bad guys want to crash the system to either take over the world or hide all their misdeeds over the past, 100 years.
Yeah, and it can't go on forever because, as we know, a lot of the physical wealth is moving from west to east, and we know that the Chinese are hoarding gold. Silver is very popular as well. So let's just talk about the tangibles and the quantifiables. There was an article from our friend Jeff Nielsen just the other day called 30 Years of Zero Price Discovery in Silver. He posted that over at Sprott Money, and of course we picked it up at SGT Report. And I just want to read the first paragraph. He writes, "A recent commentary presented readers with a shocking reality for which there was final, unequivocal data. There has been a supply deficit in the silver market for roughly 30 consecutive years. Such a deficit is unprecedented in the history of human commerce. Indeed, in almost any other market, it would be absolutely impossible." The reason I wanted to just talk about that, Bix, is to get your take on silver as a monetary metal. When we see gold plummet, we see silver plummet. When we see gold skyrocket, we see the chart of silver do the exact same thing. And yet they tell us it's merely an industrial metal, not a monetary one. That's not true, is it?
No, not at all. And the reason it's been in a deficit, it was able to be in a deficit is, come the 1940s and 1950s, silver was basically used as money and jewelry and maybe utensils and some photography. The world completely flipped with the introduction of electronics and silver being the best conductor of electricity. Now all that silver is being consumed. It's no longer being saved in banks and in people's backyards and on their dinner settings. It's being consumed by these electronics because they use them in such little amounts. That's why all this silver was available. Yeah, there was 50 billion ounces in 1950 supposedly of physical silver available, and today maybe 5 or 6 billion, including all the silver that is available for use, including silver tea sets and silverware and silver in the comics and everywhere. There's only about 5 billion ounces left, which is hysterical because there's 6 billion ounces of silver still on the planet. Now, all the silver's still there. Obviously, it doesn't disappear, but it gets split up into such small amounts in these electronics that it doesn't make sense at $1,000 silver price per ounce to recycle it, because it's all pretty much gone. What happened to your cell phone and your flat screen TV and all the electronics and the smart bombs? All that silver's still out there somewhere, but it's in such micro amounts that we're not going to get that back. That is the key driver. Ultimately, you can take all the electronic monetary rigging of silver and the COMEX and the LBMA, which the COMEX in November supposedly traded, and this is right out of the COMEX data, over 348 million ounces of silver every day in the month of November. That's ridiculous. I mean, there's no sense in reality in that number, and that's where the problem lies. Is that there is no reality in these markets anymore, and anybody looking at the price of silver, looking at the price of gold, has to remember at every moment that it has absolutely nothing to do with the physical amount of silver or gold left in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk now about The Economist magazine, which we know is at least in part owned by the Rothschilds. I talk a lot about the 1988 cover of The Economist magazine, Bix, in which we see a phoenix rising from the ashes of burning fiat currency. And around the phoenix's neck is a gold medallion. And of course, then the cover says, "Get ready for a global currency." And the gold medallion says 2018. These people have been telegraphing their moves for the better part of 25, 30 years here. And then in 2015, we saw that occult-riddled cover of The Economist magazine, which included a nuclear explosion going off in the background and all sorts of really crazy, spooky imagery that so many people have done a great job dissecting, including our buddy over there at VigilantCitizen.com. And now we see the world in 2016, the new Economist magazine cover with Angela Merkel front and center, who I think Time magazine just named their Person of the Year, which is hilarious because how could she possibly be? There's so many more interesting people, including Putin. So, Bix, I just wanted to get your take on the world in 2016, according to The Economist.
as as full of the occult symbolism and objects in the 2015 cover, the 2016 magazine triples it, quadruples it, and there's some absolutely horrifying things that that they talk about. And it's not just on the cover. I mean, you can look at the cover and say, "Wow, you've got Merkel front and center." Nobody thinks right now that Merkel will be front and center in the world, but there's also, if you look behind it, there's a gold coin with a euro on it being parachuted down with strings to a paper euro. Does that mean that Germany is going to back somehow the euro? and maybe the EU backs the euro, which would destroy the dollar because the euro would all of a sudden be the world's most, strongest currency. It would be the only one backed by a euro. I mean, things like that. And then if you open the magazine, it gets 10 times worse and better. From my point of view, the road to Ruta theory, it goes back to Alan Greenspan's original computer programs back in the 60s. Well, in the inside, there's a full painting of the full picture, and there's all kinds of conspiracy things in the full picture, including Alan Greenspan pulling the lever of some kind of, I believe it's some kind of computer machine turning from 2008 to something, and they don't say what the date is, but obviously if it's the 2016 magazine, it has four magazines for 1987, 2000, or 1993, 2000, and 2006, all hugely important in the life of Alan Greenspan's plan to take down the system. In 97, the crash, the huge stock market crash that was mainly caused by computers, and it's, afterwards that was proven. The 1993 lowering of the interest rates to cause the 94 bond crash, the 2000, which caused the 2001 dot-com bubble, and then in 2006, which is the last year of Alan Greenspan's reign as the head of the Fed. Very interesting. There's a little baby reaching out for the world. A lot of people saying that's the new world order. I'm more in the camp of those who say, well, that's the elite saying, hey, you guys can't handle the system by yourself, so we have to control it for you. And then there's you can go down the line. Bill Clinton. It has Bill Clinton front and center in color. I mean, that guy hasn't been in the news since forever. Mm-hmm. And there he is, sitting there right in the middle. Something is going to happen this year, 2016, that puts him front and center. And it has here's another interesting thing. The only candidate it has there's 30 people on this picture. The only candidate for president is Hillary Clinton. So obviously that's the Economist choice.
Yeah, I see that. And the other thing that I think is a bit noteworthy is this sort of horned Baphomet figure wearing a suit with devil horns coming out of his head. And he's really essentially pinned to Clinton's left lapel, standing in front of Clinton.
And I think that is definitely part of the agenda, is to demonize the bankers, to basically keep the people who are in control, the people behind the bankers and behind the politicians, keep them in charge. You're going to have to blame someone for the coming chaos. They don't want to blame the government officials because they control them better than they control the bankers. But if they blame the bankers as that's the boogeyman, the bad bankers, then they can continue to pull the strings behind the scenes. So, and right by that figure is a whole bunch of, it looks like, weary army type people wandering aimlessly out of something or into something, but they don't look like they're ready for battle. They look exhausted and basically bugging out. So, and there's 50 other things. My favorite thing, as a silver bug, on the top right, there's a sign made, and it's colored in silver. It says "Freedom for," and then you can't see the bottom. Mm-hmm. It looks to me a lot like Chris Duane holding that sign up behind the sign. It says "Freedom for" what? Could it be silver? Who knows? You're gonna have to read into that one.
Well, that's interesting. There's also a UFO on here, and getting back to that Baphomet banker, again, maybe it's them saying, you guys are right. We do worship Satan. We are satanic Luciferians, and the dark forces of this world will prevail over you puny little humans. The other thing is China rising like a phoenix in the background with the symbolism of the warrior, the Chinese warrior, on top of the temple. It's just something else. I guess Matt Herring gets credit for having come up with all this, but I find it really impossible that he would have come up with this on his own without any notes or input from others.
No, he didn't. I mean, he was told what to do. Look at what was it, Christine Lagarde, very tiny figure in the very back, and just today they announced that she was busted in some kind of scandal and owes millions and millions of dollars for corruption, and she says, "Oh, I'm going to stay as the head of the IMF." So yeah, there's all kinds of things. I did my first article on it, and I just barely scratched the surface. And the bigger thing, this is going to really freak people out, but if you buy the magazine, the cover is the left half of the picture. You go to page 15, and it shows the full picture. And the scariest thing is you turn to page 36 and 37, and it's called the calendar for 2016. And there is a cartoon on there that will absolutely blow your mind. It's got bombs going off. It's got those arrows again, but this time there's like 50 arrows all over the place. It's got tanks going into an exit tunnel, and above it it has Go National Parks. To me, that symbolizes, for years, the part of the bad guys' plan was to get control of the U.S. natural resources, and the Congress has fought them off fairly well. Obama had on his desk a total nationalization plan of everything from the Canadian border down to Mexico in kind of the West, where all the coal and gold mines are and all that. Luckily, that didn't get passed. But this picture has tanks going into this tunnel that has an exit that is crossed off, and above it is some animals saying "Go National Parks." I think there is some serious stuff coming down in 2016. There's all kinds of wars in the sky. A lot of people have talked about, I think it's called Project Bluebeam, that they were going to try to fake an alien invasion and all this stuff. I mean, that's what they're doing in this picture. Is that going to happen in 2016? I don't know, but you can read through this, and it kind of gives on the left side, tells you what's happening each month that is important to the bad guys. One scary thing is, if you look at the voting podiums up there on top of the picture, the UK flag is there, and it has London written on it, as opposed to the rest of the flags, but it also has an arrow in it, and none of the other podiums do. So, do we expect a terrorist attack in London? Another one? I don't know. If you believe what the IMF or the Economist is saying here, that's one of their potential plans for the future, which is very scary, because if you think about it, even the stuff that came true in the 2015 cover, that had to be planned years beforehand. Mm-hmm. So, we're on their agenda, and we can fight it all we want. Hopefully, we can take them out, but it's very difficult to do that.
Yeah, Bix, that fold out full cover calendar thing you're talking about is truly disturbing. And as it relates to these people and their plans, the UFO that they put in the artwork in Project Bluebeam is certainly a thing people talk about and need to be aware of. Fake alien invasion, that type of thing. But the other thing that I think is interesting is right dead center in the picture, we see a Muslim or an Islamic type terrorist with a headband, and it kind of looks like al-Baghdadi, who of course is a managed leader, quote unquote, leader of ISIS, who John McCain met with. And I think it just speaks to the fact that they put this stuff right out in the open, and only those of us with eyes to see and ears to hear can decipher it. The sheeple have no idea what any of this means. And the other thing that I think is really despicable and speaks to their satanic agenda in their lack of respect for sovereign nation states, which of course is obvious that they don't respect nation states. They hate nation states. They hate independence. They hate liberty. They hate freedom. Look what they've done to the American flag. They've absolutely desecrated the American flag. And the part where the stars should be is green for their green agenda. Then you've got the multicolored rainbow, and I'm sure that, it stands for the sexual liberation and the breakdown of morals and the breakdown of the American society, which was based on "In God We Trust" and based on some biblical principles. And they want to flood us with immigrants and refugees. They want to absolutely destroy the United States from within. And I think that's exactly what they're showing with that desecrated flag.
I absolutely agree. That is what they're showing, and that is their plan, and that's fairly obvious. They're trying to do that to Europe as well, and they're trying to do it everywhere, and that plays right into their agenda. Nationalism is they fear it. They fear that everybody's going to stand up as one and say, get out of our country, and we don't want you here, and we're going to fight you from our position of national strength. They don't want that. So yeah, that's definitely there for a reason. One big thing that I love is the zooming flying cell phone with the cape in the very back. And there's an article in the magazine about the rise of cryptocurrencies and electronic payment systems. I'm a big fan of it. I understand it. It took me a long time. I didn't get it for a long time because I was so stuck in the gold and silver world, but I do get that it is an asset, not anybody's liability, and yes, it's electronic blips, but if you believe the internet will be gone, we have bigger problems because we run everything off the internet now, from power to food distribution to banking to everything. If the internet goes away, we go away. So you better hope that stays in place. And if that's in place, the best way and most efficient way to transact business if the banks crash, let me rephrase that, when the banks crash, will be through electronic peer-to-peer payments. I mean, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's some other cryptocurrency or whether it's something new invented by your country, that is the best way to go. It is not through the banking system and any kind of central authority.
Yeah, and our buddy Jay Snip over there does these WebBot reports based on Cliff High's WebBot research, and he's been talking a while now about new WebBot information suggesting that after a re-breakout of Bitcoin to the mid 400s, the WebBot information suggests a price explosion coming for silver. We haven't seen it yet, though. So, I don't put too much stock in the web bots, but they've made some predictions that have come true. Probably as many have come true as haven't. But I do like Cliff's work, and I think the web bot research is interesting. And we're just waiting for that silver breakout, aren't we?
Well, and I've said this a few times, not enough. I think silver will be last. I think silver is the most important thing they must rig, so it will be last.
Hmm.
And it will probably happen with the banking crash, which has kind of already started. If you look at the high yield debt out there, and the third world nations that borrowed all this free money, and now the Fed raising rates, this is catastrophic for anybody leveraged. And we're going to see, it didn't happen the first day, obviously, because you got this exchange stabilization fund and the all those guys in there rigging the market to pretend that the Fed did the right thing. But it's happened. It's going to happen any day, and it's going to be catastrophic for anyone with leverage or anyone in the high yield bond market. Those funds are collapsing as we speak, and the energy sector, those companies are going bankrupt, and that is a huge investment asset for these banks. And the banks will, finally admit, oh well, we're going to have to take write downs, and they stocked up on cash to cover some hits coming forward, but not enough, and that's what is the next pillar to break is going to be the banking pillar, and that's the big one.
All right, I have one last question for you, and it's a little out there, but I'm sure you're familiar with those Steve Jackson Games Illuminati playing cards, aren't you? You've seen those.
I am a little familiar with them, and I like looking at them after the fact
Yeah, me
because,
too.
and there's so many of them that a lot of stuff you can say, well, that didn't come true, and who knows.
Right. But here's what I think is fascinating, and you and I both mentioned it in this interview. I first, when mentioning the 1988 cover of The Economist magazine, saying these people have had these plans for better than approaching 3 decades. And then you said the same thing, that clearly these people must make these plans, far in advance of them coming true. So how do you explain these Illuminati playing cards? And I just want to provide just a couple examples. There's a card that shows sort of a Alex Jones, Ron Paul figure, almost as deceivers of the public. And then there's sort of a Donald Trump figure. There's World Trade Center Towers 1 and 2 appearing to be hit or on fire. There's a playing card of the Pentagon with a fire in the middle. It's like, how do you possibly explain these cards that, according to Wikipedia, is a standalone card game made by Steve Jackson Games, inspired by the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea. The game has ominous secret societies competing with each other to control the world through sinister means, including illegal, legal, and even mystical. Boy, that really hits the nail on the head. That's exactly what they're doing.
Well, it gets into a deeper question. I mean, how can you explain Nostradamus, predicting the collapse of the towers of Babylon and things like that? I mean, it gets into a bigger question of how much of what we're doing in our experience here is is real or is already planned, and we kind of play our part and do what we do and then judge ourselves when we die. And it really is, there is a mystical side that not many people understand. How does Cliff High's predictions, when he does get them right, how does he do that? Things like that make you think, well, okay, maybe the way life goes, it is already set out, and our participation in it is what really matters. And Gandhi said, what you do will be insignificant, but it's important that you do it. I think those are deeper questions than I am able to able to figure out. But there is something there, and there is. You look at Martin Armstrong's computer models, and he clearly believes that there is a path that's already been laid out, and we're just trying to figure out what that path is, and how what we're doing here to participate in it, and ultimately what we'll leave with, what lessons we learned, and do we come back and do it again, and play the same pattern out again. I don't know, but it is clear to me that there is knowledge of future events all over the place, and some people have tapped into it, and some people believe that everything happens by chance and coincidence.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. It is part of a much deeper, much more philosophical discussion. And it's a spiritual discussion, too, to the degree that I've said for a very long time, as you know, Bix, that we are in a state of spiritual warfare on planet Earth. And at this point in human history, it's the banksters and their secret societies versus humanity.
I agree, and what an amazing time to be here on Earth, and be alive, and the opening up of this hidden knowledge is really really exciting, and I couldn't think of a better time in the past to be around, to experience it, to explore it and uncover it, and reveal it, and then fight for what is right, and that's what we're doing.
Well, yeah, that's right. And Bix, thanks so much for your time. It's always a real pleasure to connect with you every couple of months. And, I mean, you always take us in directions that none of the other pundits do. And I think that speaks to your nature as a thinker and somebody who's not afraid to ask the tough questions and put yourself out there. You put yourself out there in so many ways for so long. And we appreciate your work over there at roadtoruta.com. Can you tell people about your website?
Sure. But first, I'd like to say your work is unbelievable. I go to your site every day, and you reveal so many of these crazy secrets and conspiracies. I love it. Thank you very much for what you do.
Thank you.
Roadtoruta.com is my website. I send out an email a couple times a week, kind of everything related to the overall theory of roadtoruta.com, that there's people trying to take down the bad guys, the fight between the bad guys and the good guys. And it's interesting, and it's a different take than most people, but sometimes it might seem crazy, and sometimes it is crazy. But sometimes you come back. I've been saying the same things for 8 years now, and it's coming closer and closer to being fully true. So I'm excited about the year in 2016, even though it may be chaotic.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really curious about 2018, getting back to that Economist cover from 1988. I mean, they said it. 30 years from now, get ready for a global currency that appears to be exactly where they're taking us, and they seem to be right on time. And by the way, thanks for those kind comments about me. You're a good friend, so your check's in the mail for that one.
No problem.
That was kind. All right, and guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We do appreciate your support at sgtreport.com. It means the world to us. And I hope you have a terrific week ahead. And by the way, we wish you a very Merry Christmas. God bless.